Hey guys, Angie here to break down UFC 301, the main event, which is Alexandre Pantoja versus Steve Erceg for the flyweight title. This fight is actually more competitive than what I think a lot of people want to give it credit for. Steve Erceg is a really talented fighter, a lot less experienced, but he does, I think, match up quite well with Alexandre Pantoja compared to other top flyweights. Let's start with Steve Erceg. Obviously, I'm pretty high on Steve Erceg because I'm Australian. I saw him come up in the Eternal regional scene. So I started watching MMA about 5 years ago. I was watching UFC, and then I started watching Eternal, which is an Australian promotion. And there I saw Steve Erceg had one fight. Then he disappeared for a couple of years, but I heard that he was really good. I saw one fight, and I'm like, oh, that's a shame. This guy was champion flyweight at Eternal MMA, disappeared for 2 years. I think he had an injury. Then he came back and rallied up the title defenses. Wikipedia isn't right, by the way. I think they've got that wrong. They have left out that he had all those title defenses. And then it felt like it was only a matter of time before he would get his shot in the UFC. So he has had a bit of adversity in his career. Once he was in the UFC, he had win after win, some fights more exciting than others. I always thought he would do well in UFC. I just wasn't sure if he should be rushed or not. But I think over the past couple of fights, he's sort of gained a bit more composure. In his last fight, he did get hit a bit by Matt Schnell, which was a little bit, I don't know. But I think Erceg's new style of boxing in MMA may be something for Pantoja to be wary of. Unless Pantoja does a really good job keeping close to Erceg, he's going to probably find himself in a few sticky situations with that striking range of Erceg. So yeah, I'm really excited about this fight. I think Steve Erceg has a very good shot at winning. So looking at Steve Erceg, yes, his only loss is by decision, and that was early in his career. He's currently on an 11-fight win streak. He's very confident and composed. He's adapted to the levels of the UFC very well. Even though the flyweight division isn't very deep, he's definitely adapted to the competition level quite well. He has high-level boxing, but does sometimes get hit in the pocket. He's never fought beyond the third round. Oh, that's because he's finished his opponents in the championship fights. And like I said, he probably matches up better with Pantoja than some of those other top-level flyweights like Brandon Moreno and a few of those other guys. Steve is 28 years of age, so quite young, coming into his prime for flyweight. Flyweight kind of favors the younger guys. 13 pro fights, which is a third of the pro fight experience that Pantoja's had, and given the level of competition as well. He's taller at 5'8". He has a slight reach advantage, which is interesting because usually I think Erceg has more of a reach advantage, and he has a substantial leg reach advantage. They both have excellent BJJ. Looking at Pantoja, nothing really stands out about him, but he has a very, very strong will, and he's very composed, and he knows how to win fights with the game plan and stick to it. He's very disciplined. I think even though he has gassed out in some of his longer fights, he knows how to win the rounds and he knows how to stay composed. So he's going to be very tough to finish, I think, unless Steve can catch him somehow. He's currently on a 5-fight win streak and he has one title defense under his belt. He has that massive advantage with experience, not just fight experience, but also with the big main event UFC events, whereas Erceg, I think he's been on a main card before, but he wasn't a main event. He wasn't a featured bout, I don't think. I could be wrong there. Pantoja is one of those fighters, a bit like Kamaru Usman. When Kamaru started fighting and being champion, nothing really stood out. I mean, his wrestling did, obviously, but like he said, he's not the best at one thing. He's the best at mixing it all together, and I think Pantoja is one of those fighters as well. I think Pantoja has a bit more strength in the wrestling, which could be a problem for Erceg in the grappling exchanges. I think maybe their BJJ might be on par. They've both got very high-level BJJ, but I think that Pantoja's going to have a bit of strength in the clinch and in the wrestling. So Erceg's going to want to avoid him if he can. Pantoja's last fight against Brandon Royval was very dominant. His fight with Brandon Moreno was extremely competitive, but I do think that I gave him that. He edged it out. He won by split decision. He submitted Alex Perez, which has aged very well. Pantoja is a minus 200 favorite against Steve Erceg, who is a plus 165. I thought the odds might be a bit wider because I thought people may not respect Steve Erceg, but it looks like people are respecting him more than what I thought they would. Because I thought Erceg might be plus 250 or 300, but People aren't underestimating him as much as what I thought, which is interesting. This fight could go either way. You've got to favour Pantoja. He has that experience. He has been winning a lot of decisions lately and 5-round decisions, whereas Erceg's never won a 5-round fight by decision, and he's never gone beyond the 3rd round. So that's something to really keep in mind. I can imagine Erceg might have better cardio than Pantoja, but we've never seen it. Pantoja knows how to compose himself quite well, even though he gasses out, and he uses his strength to just grab onto you and recover. So that could be a problem for Erceg. So I think Erceg's best chance at winning this fight is catching him in the early rounds, surprising him with something crazy, but watching out for Pantoja to close the distance. I can also see Erceg maybe winning a decision if he's able to avoid Pantoja closing the distance too. Oh god, this is such a good fight. It's going to be very competitive, I think. I wouldn't underestimate Steve Erceg at all. I think, though, I'm going to pick Steve Erceg for an upset. I reckon he'll knock him out maybe in round 2 or even round 1. He could go out there and surprise Pantoja, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it go either way. So that's about it for this week. I'm a little busy, so I'm just keeping it at the one fight at the moment. But thanks for your support and thanks for coming by and enjoy the fights. It does seem very soon after UFC 300, and maybe they should have made this a fight night. At a glance, the other fights, they seem a bit lackluster compared to 300, but when you really look at them, they're going to be really great fights anyway. So enjoy and see you around the traps. All right, bye.